Hello friends, and welcome to this very special Christmas Kerbal Space Program episode, where we'll be launching a very unique payload into orbit in celebration of this wonderful season. I just had to be quiet for a second so we could see the majesty of this rocket launch. The engines firing up. And then, for the most part, it's pretty much just a standard rocket ascent. So I'm speeding up the footage a little bit. However, you may notice that the fairing on this craft is rather odd looking. What could it possibly house? Is it a space station component? Is it a satellite? Is it a miniature space plane of some kind? Who knows? We shall find out soon. There we have stage separation, and the second stage does in fact have air brakes on it, because I will be trying to recover it, SpaceX style. But to do that, I gotta get that second stage's apoapsis as high as possible in as short of a time as possible, because there's a very limited window in vanilla Kerbal Space Program where you can actually do first stage recoveries. So I gotta hurry up and get that second stage as high as possible. And here you can see I'm transferring some of the fuel into that lower stage there of the lower fuel tank of the first stage there to try to get the center of balance, center of gravity, as low as possible to try to keep it a little bit more balanced, because on my first initial test of this, it really wanted to belly flop, and eventually it just kind of landed on its side in the ocean, which was not ideal. So here I'm just trying to get those air brakes to get to the point where they can actually steer the craft, and I ignite those engines and kill off all of my vertical speed so I can set her down in the sea nice and smooth. Beautiful. Now theoretically we could actually recover this. I'm not going to though, just yet. I can do so later, because I need to switch to that second stage as quickly as possible before it reaches its apoapsis, so I can hurry up and stage and reveal what the payload is. The payload is in fact a Christmas tree! Because what better way to celebrate the season in Kerbal Space Program than to launch a Christmas tree into space? But we're not just sending this to space. Oh no. You may notice this thing has a ludicrous amount of delta V on it. So, at first I was thinking, should we send it to the Mun? Should we send it to Minmus? We could even send it to Duna, but no. What is the most festive planet we could send this to? Of course, it is the beautiful green Jewel, the gas giant of the Kerbal system. And now I'm hurrying up and speeding this footage up also to 10 times speed, not counting the warp time in-game, because that Poodle engine has absolutely abysmal thrust-weight ratio. It was so slow getting my burns done, so I'm hurrying up and speeding through that, and I'm just making my maneuver node to get to Jewel. And I'll have to be doing a mid-course correction burn so that I can get as close to Tylo as I possibly can, so I can get a nice gravity assist and essentially capture around Jewel for free, barring a couple monopropellant puffs. It's pretty much all I would need in order to get captured in the Jewel system. Now, I thought my apoapsis height at this point had already been raised to the altitude or to the height of Joules, but it turns out it actually hadn't. So I had to do another correction burn. Well, actually, wait, now that I'm looking at it, it was raised all the way to Joules height, so I don't know what the deal was. For some reason, my orbital line shrunk again once I got out past Kerbin's sphere of influence, so I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but I ended up needing to do an additional burn in order to get back into Joules' sphere of influence again. Back into a trajectory that would lead me into Joule. And then I just did another bunch of little monopropellant puffs to get as close to Tylo as I possibly could. And just like that, we are now captured in the Joule system. That's pretty much all it takes. And it was at this point that I was kind of wondering where we should go next. Whether we should go to Lathe, or to Bop, or one of the other planets, or just leave it in Joule orbit. But then I thought, you know what, we have lots of Delta V left. Why not just go to Val? Because Val is, in fact, the icy moon of the Joule system. It is most perfectly fitting with this theme. It made the most sense. So I just quickly plotted my maneuver there to try to get as close to Val as possible. Of course, the maneuver node maker isn't the most accurate, so I had to do another mid-course correction, but that wasn't too expensive. We still have loads of Delta V in this craft, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. And there we have now got an encounter with Val. Now, I was going to try to get the inclination around Val a little bit more equatorial, and I was fidgeting around with that for a while trying to get it, but my inclination around Joule was just too eccentric, so I couldn't get it the way I wanted it. And eventually I just kind of gave up and said, that's close enough. I quickly swing around, and I eventually do get really close to Val there, and I warp to my maneuver node. And I start my retrograde burn. I was worried I wouldn't actually be able to capture around Val. This was actually my first mission that I've ever actually done to Val. I've gone to the Jewel system before, but I've never actually gone to Val, so I wasn't exactly sure how this was going to work. And I wasn't quite sure if I'd quite be able to circularize, because it seemed like my speed was up pretty high, but eventually my orbital line did start to swing around, and I got captured. And then I just decided, well, I was originally going to do a circular orbit around Val a couple of times, pick a good landing spot, and then do a retrograde burn, and then land. But then I thought I might as well just land right away, because there's a couple relatively flat-looking spots, so I just kind of went for it. Little did I know, however, Val is not actually that similar to Minmus in the fact that it is actually quite lumpy, it would appear. I was not aware of this at the time, and it turned out to be a bit more challenging than I expected. Also, regrettably, Val is tidally locked to Jewel, which meant that I wasn't going to get any of those beautiful Jewel rises over the horizon, but that's alright. I was trying to correct my trajectory a little bit here because I was going to be heading into a mountain if I didn't change it around a little bit, which would not have been an ideal landing location, as the even flatter looking locations turned out to be a bit more difficult than I was expecting. I may or may not have crashed a few times. Sooner or later, though, I figured out that it would be better to drain all of that, which is part of the reason why you see here why I was so apprehensive to land it any faster than just an absolute snail's pace as I was coming down. And I slowly but surely get down to the surface. I was using auto SAS and the RCS blocks to try to keep it as centered as possible. There, you can see I'm experimenting with the fuel tanks right there, as you can see. I still actually had a lot of fuel left. I'm not sure where else we could have really gone realistically. I know we wouldn't have been able to do a Tylo landing, but there is some fuel there if ever we need it for anything else, I suppose. And there is a nice, beautiful touchdown. I was holding those RCS blocks on as long as possible, praying that the thing wouldn't tip over. And thankfully it did not this time around. So I can turn on all of the beautiful sparkling lights and see our Christmas tree landed on the icy moon. Our mission was accomplished. And Jeb can go ahead and do a quick EVA here in just a second. First we had to see our beautiful tree. And oh no. Oh no. It was at this point that I realized I didn't actually have any ladders or way for Kerbals to hold on to this thing. So Jeb kind of got a little bit bumped around by all of the ornaments. But it's fine, he's Jebediah, he's used to that sort of thing by now, I'm sure. We may or may not have to do a rescue mission for him at some point, because as of right now, he's kind of stuck there. But with that, the episode is concluded, and I hope you all have the absolute merriest of Christmases and a wonderful New Year. Thank you all so very much for watching.